Influence operations were real. Russia ran disinformation campaigns, hacked political organizations, and tried to sway public opinion, calling it a wake-up call for U.S. election security, close quote. Why did Larry leave that out? Was it on purpose? Was it to be deceitful? Why contribute to misinformation and divisiveness in the United States? For a paycheck? I'm looking for an honest answer because Larry wasn't honest. So yes, vote tallies were not changed, but yes, they did stage a disinformation campaign. I'm very appalled that this is the actions this man takes. I wonder what God would think about this. Thank you, Bill C. I'm not quite sure what Bill C's objection is. Let me just say this. If he's saying that I did not say that the Russians were engaging in a disinformation campaign, that the Russians were not interfering with the elections, okay, Bill. I know I speak quickly, so I'll slow down. The Russians interfered. The Russians interfered. The Russians interfered. The Russians were engaging in a disinformation campaign. The Russians were engaging in a disinformation campaign. And by the way, the Russians engaged in a disinformation campaign. I never said that a prominent Democrat said the Russians changed vote tallies, but I did say that prominent Democrats like Hillary routinely referred to Donald Trump as illegitimate and said the election was stolen. How would the election be stolen unless she's not implying that the Russians somehow altered vote tallies? She didn't say it. Jimmy Carter, on the other hand, did say that once the investigation is done, we'll find out that the Russians put him there. They said that. More importantly, 66% of Democrats, as I've said many times, according to a YouGov poll in 2018, 66% of Democrats believe the Russians, quote, changed vote tallies, close quote, to elect Trump. This is even though Jay Johnson said not a single vote tally was changed, yet 66% of Democrats believe vote tallies were in fact changed. Now you explain that to me. I know
of no evidence that through cyber intrusions, votes were altered or suppressed in some way.
Yet 66% of Democrats believe vote tallies were changed. And as far as the interference is concerned, why are you leaving out other things that Jay Johnson said? Jay Johnson said, I have no idea whether or not the Russian interference altered public opinion. I'd have to be a mind reader. I'd have to have a world where there was Russian interference, one where there wasn't, and compare the two. Since I can't do that, I'd have to be a mind reader. I don't know. I did say there was a study done by the NYU Stern School of Management that looked into the effect of the Russian interference. And they concluded that the Russian interference had no material effect one way or the other. That mostly what Russia did was to take out a bunch of Facebook ads, about 5,000 of them, some pro-Hillary, some anti-Hillary, some pro-Trump, some anti-Trump, some pro-Black Lives Matter, some anti-Black Lives Matter, and that most of the people that saw those, by the way, were Trump supporters anyway who weren't likely to change their point of view. So the Stern School of Management concluded that the Russian interference likely had no material effect on public opinion. More importantly, and this is what's important, Bill, according to the new documents that Tulsi Gabbard has released, President Barack Obama was informed that Hillary had paid for the Steele dossier and the DNC paid for it. And it was bogus. He was informed of this. But that Hillary was doing it to take the heat away from the scandal of her unsecured server in her basement. Obama had no problem with this. He was informed of it. He didn't stop it. He didn't tell her not to do it. He had no problem with it. He was also informed, Obama, that while the Russians were interfering, there is no evidence that they're interfering to benefit Trump. The intelligence community's assessment was the Russians were meddling, assuming Trump was going to lose. Everybody thought Hillary was going to win, so did the Russians. But let's just make it that it does not appear to be a legitimate result no matter what happens. So the intelligence community did not conclude that the Russians were interfering to help Trump. Trump wins. Obama calls the heads of the intelligence services in and says, give me a new assessment, except this time conclude that the Russians were not only interfering, but they were interfering to benefit Trump, knowing full well that it wasn't true. That's the problem. That's why, in my opinion, Obama very likely did something unlawful. Will he be held accountable? No, for a couple of reasons. One, the race card, as we talked about before. Take what happened with the streets of America in the summer of 2020 and put it on steroids over George Floyd. And secondly, because of the victory that Donald Trump obtained in the Supreme Court that said if you are engaging as a president in an official act, you are immune from liability. So for all those reasons, those two reasons primarily, nothing's going to happen to Barack Obama. But that does not apply to the other people, Brennan, Clapper, Comey, Strzok, Page, and other people that colluded, in my opinion, to create the impression that Donald Trump was put there by the Russians, that he is an illegitimate president. Now we on the same page, Bill?
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.